representatives who have spoken before me today on both the affirmation and negation have discussed at length the environmental and economic ramifications of passage of this bill. But what we need to see is that they're really unknowingly debating whether or not to fall prey to one of the most blatantly obvious scams that we've been with in recent times. Now, what we need to see is that just like Representative Hernandez said himself, the people running this project are a little sketchy. And that's exactly why we cannot give them $1 billion US without having sufficient information, which is why we failed today. Now, first, we need to look towards the fact that the $1 billion we would be giving is an incredibly minute amount of money. Now, I look towards Bloomberg Business Week on June 27, 2013, that says that it's projected that it would cost about $40 billion to construct this canal. So, by giving 1/40th of the amount, we really aren't making enough difference in their cost to have any say in what they're building or how they're building it. And now, this continues on to say that after the completion of this project, the HKND maintains the rights to operate the canal for 50 to 100 years after its completion. The HKND is not affiliated with either Nicaragua or the United States, but really with China, and with the corrupt leader of the HKND, Wang Ling. And now we need to see that because we will not have a real say in the influence in the region, and we're really just throwing $1 billion away to something we really don't have a lot of information about, we cannot pass this piece of legislation. And now let's look at Wang Jing, because really he has no experience with canal building, with infrastructure, or anything. I quote Bloomberg Business Week again that says that he's a telecommunications expert. He has nothing to do with canals. He knows nothing about how to build it, and that is exactly why we cannot trust him with $1 billion of our U.S. taxpayer dollars. It's almost irresponsible to throw this money away without any more information. And another reason we don't have information is because that article continues on to say that this company has yet to actually release a full plan. What Representative Zines came up and talked about was mere speculation. They've released minor details, but they haven't actually stated what will happen. That's just the logical thing. We cannot fall prey to these logical fallacies because we really have no information. And when we don't have information, it's very reckless to throw our money away. And now we need to look towards where a lot of our environmental information will be coming from, because the only company that is allowed to conduct those environmental studies is the HKND. They are the only ones who are allowed to actually observe this region and make the final call. So a company that is making that call to build a project is going to ignore the actual environmental ramifications. And now, I would love to help build a canal. I would love to help these displaced people. But because this is sketchy, like Mr. Hernandez said, we must know it. Thank you.
Thank you. 3 minutes and 9 seconds. Questioners, please rise. It's getting more difficult. Representative Niersbach and Elvis.
Representative, wasn't Rwanda sketchy before we moved in?
Yes.
So, Representative, considering that this is displacing millions of people,
I don't know how you can say that Rwanda and Nicaragua are the
I'm
same
giving
thing.
an example of the time we did not act, Representatives, and shouldn't we, considering there are millions of people about to be displaced, act on the human rights in this legislation?
I don't think this is the same at all. They're not targeting specific ethnic groups in Nicaragua.
Representative, regardless, it's hurting human rights, and therefore we should be concerned.
So why should we give them $1 billion?
Because, Representatives, that's helping those people who are being displaced, is it not?
But we're giving it to this corrupt.
Representative, does this say that we'll give the money to the HKND?
It doesn't specify.
The resolution specifies it's going to give the money to the Nicaraguan
Who
government.
is working with them?
Who is working, and the money is supposed to go towards stopping the disaster, stopping the damage from this.
Exactly, but if they won't even release what damage is happening, how are we to know that they will help to
Has
displace
not
people?
Representative Zines said that there was a lot of damage that we should help fix?
Yes, the wire has gone into depth.
So shouldn't we be giving this money to help stop the damage?
Yes, but what I'm saying is the money, we have no way of knowing that it will go to where we want it to go.
As we are the government, can we not ensure that the money will go?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Pro speakers, please rise. Here's my folder. Representative Zhang.
Thank
You
you.
have the floor.
Representative Zhang, DHND, speaking for the first time today. pledges when you're ready to be raised. Not long ago, lawyers, engineers, executives, businessmen, and consultants gathered under a tree canopy in Nicaragua. Why? To build a canal 3 times the length of Panama that runs through Nicaragua, regardless of the environmental effects or the effects on indigenous people. This Congress here today needs to realize that this canal is going to be built regardless of whatever we say, and because of that, we need to help the Nicaraguan people right now, and we need to pass this bill. Now, the first reason why we need to pass this bill is because this will allow us to increase our influence within the region. And this is because we'll be helping combat the environmental harms and we'll be helping the indigenous people displaced. Representative Hernandez came before us and told us about the 1 million acres of forest that would be destroyed and all the indigenous people that would be displaced. This is a perfect opportunity for the United States to step in and to help the Nicaraguan people in a time of need. Representative Rapson says that we won't have any influence within the region and we won't have any influence in the building of this canal. But what we can do is step in and increase American sentiment within the region for the future. And Representative Zayas in questions so that we can just oppose the construction of a canal and we don't have to worry about this anymore. But that's not the case because this canal is going to be built, Representative Zayas, and as a Congress, it's our job to step in. It's our job to help the Nicaraguan people when they're in need. And we need to help them most importantly because this is the best to do this. Earlier this year on January 28th, a reform was ratified which allowed for the indefinite re-election of the Nicaraguan president. According to the Brookings Institute on February 12th of 2011, it tells us about similar efforts within the region. 14 out of 18 countries in the region authorized re-election under a variety of methods. This includes indefinite re-election in Venezuela and Nicaragua, and consecutive re-election in Brazil, Argentina, Bolivia, Colombia, and Ecuador. The South American region is a region with so much potential for growth. They're a developing region. If the United States can instill our influence within the region, we'll be able to benefit in the future, especially with the growth of Brazil. And with this indefinite re-election and this consecutive re-election, this is the best time for the United States to establish long-term relationships with these South American nations. And this is because we're ensured that there will be constant leadership, unchanging leadership within Nicaragua, because right now President Ortega is experiencing extreme popular support among his constituents, and the likelihood of him being re-elected is extremely high. If we can build strong relations with Nicaragua, that will allow us to build our influence within the entire South American region, expanding beyond the borders of Nicaragua and into our influence with Brazil, which has a huge potential for economic influence. Now I ask this Congress here today to help Nicaragua when it's in need, to help these people. But along with that, we're also promoting our efforts, our future efforts, our long-term relationships with these South American nations. We're promoting efforts at diplomacy. Congress here today needs to stand with me in affirmation and pass this bill. Thank you.
Representative, 2 minutes and 59 seconds. Questions, please rise. Chair. Representative Waldera and Yorson.
Thank you. Is there anti-American sentiment in Nicaragua?
Well, by passing this bill, we'd ensure that there is pro-American sentiment.
Okay, what influence would we actually have over how the canal is built?
That's the thing, we won't have influence, but in the long term, we'll be building our relationship with Nicaragua.
Why does a better relationship with Nicaragua equal a better relationship with the entire continent?
Because if we can exert our influence within that region, then our influence can spread throughout the continent.
If Nicaragua wanted our help, then why did they go to China?
China forced Nicaragua to build a canal.
Well, then will they accept this full aid from us?
Thank you, Representative. You spoke of President Ortega's new rule regarding indefinite re-election. Are you comfortable with the United States giving $1 billion to a dictator?
Well, if President Ortega is going to be holding the position for a long time in the future, we better work towards maintaining positive relations with him.
And that leads me to my second question. How does $1 billion in American influence compare to a $40 billion investment by a Hong Kong company?
It's the fact that we're willing to show Nicaraguans that we're going to be there for them in times of need.
How will we be there for them in times of need if the canal itself...
Thank you, Representative.
Thank you.
We move now to a 3-minute con speech. Opposed, Representative Froy.
Thank you. I think use your bottles above me. Throughout American history,
we've had a tumultuous relationship with Latin American countries. Many conflicts in that region. And I applaud those who go on the affirmation and say that we need to do something good for the Latin American people. We need to get them jobs. We need to get their government revenue. But unfortunately, none of that economic gain will occur because of the scam that is being implemented by Wang Jiang. Now, Representative Rapson briefly touched on it, but I'd like to extend into describing the scam that is currently occurring in Nicaragua. Now, let's first realize that the canal will not actually be built. Representative Rob, you talked about all the economic gain that will occur because of the canal being built, the jobs that will be created, the revenue that will be given to the Nicaraguan government. Unfortunately, because of the complex nature of the Nicaraguan canal, the Chinese will never figure out how to build it. According to Reuters, in June of 2013, there is no firm route for the canal, which would cost about 4 years worth of Nicaragua's annual GDP, and would be 3 times longer and wider than the 48-mile Panama Canal. For all these reasons, investors and infrastructure experts are highly dubious that a canal will ever be built. Now, if the canal is never built, then why would we give $1 billion to help displaced workers? Representative Hernandez, you talked about the displaced Nicaraguans, and I agree with you. This is very sad, but unfortunately, these people will never actually be displaced because the canal will never actually be built. So now, let's say we give the Nicaraguan government $1 billion. Where will this $1 billion go to? Well, Wang Jiang, the director of HKND, is not even liable if the canal is never built. According to the Heritage Foundation, on August 2013, the deal the Nicaraguan government and the HKND company signed gives Wang Jiang exemption from legal recourse or economic sanctions. Now, Wang Jiang literally has no incentive to build the canal because he's already signed contracts with many businesses. He's already made his fortune. And even if the canal isn't built, he will walk away unscathed. That's right. No economic sanctions, no legal recourse. And this is unfair. So when we give $1 billion to fund the construction of the Nicaraguan canal, we're only giving $1 billion to Wang Jiang's personal fortune, and we can't do this. So even if the canal was built, would the Nicaraguan get any money? Would the Nicaraguan government get any money? No, because all the profit goes to the Chinese. And according to the Smithsonian Magazine on February 2014, after building the canal, HKND would maintain rights for the next 50 to 100 years, including any industrial centers, airports, railways, or oil pipelines built alongside the canal. So, the canal won't be built. But even if it were to be built, the Nicaraguan people would have no gain, no economic gain. Thank you. Please engage.
Thank you, Representative. 3 minutes and 1 second. Questioners, please rise. Representative Hernandez and Robbie.
Just because there's doubts, will the canal never be built?
No, the canal will never be built.
Just because there's
the
doubts.
project is too complicated, because Wang Jiang has no experience in infrastructure.
Okay, thank you. And how do we know that our $1 billion are going to China when the bill specifies that they're going to Nicaragua?
The bill will be going to Nicaragua to help with displaced citizens, but no
Yes.
citizens will actually be displaced because the canal is never going to be built and never will displace them. The $1 billion will be going straight into the hands of Wang Jiang.
How?
Because we're giving it to Nicaragua to give to HKND, the company, and
But the bill
Wa-
never specifies.
Okay, so are you saying that today's legislation just gives the money and the United States will just run away right after that?
No, I'm saying the bill gives money to the Nicaraguan government, who will give the money to the HKND, and the HKND will throw away this money and give it straight to Wang
So are you
Jiang.
saying that because of that, the United States will just idly sit there and watch what's happening?
I don't think the United States will idly sit there and watch what's happening, but we can't infringe on a contractual agreement signed by the Nicaraguan government and HKND.
If that's the case, then why won't they have some influence over the decisions that are made to actually
This
focus
bill
on
gives us no influence.
Thank you. Now time for a 3-minute pro speech. Appropriate speakers, please rise. Representative Rangino. Yeah.
Sorry.
Judges, get your paperwork together.
That's quite possible. Once again, this is Representative Ron Names for the first time position. You can just look up when you're ready. Representatives, we've discussed a lot of the implications of the canal so far. What will be the result of the canal? What will be the implication? However, what we have not discussed is what is the cause of the canal. Why is there such an investment going forward into this canal? And why is HKD, the group, willing to put forth so much money? Because there is such a huge need for this canal globally, and because environmental damage will only be temporary, I strongly urge you to vote in affirmation of this bill. And for my first contention, according to CBS News on February 24th of 2014, globalization has boosted demands for international shipping. Now, while an estimated 5% of international shipping currently goes through the Panama Canal, these numbers are expected to double by 2025. Because what we see is this huge international demand for a new canal to be built. We are not just building a canal because we feel like it, or not even just because of the Nicaraguan economy. We are building this canal for the international community that will all benefit from the presence of this canal. Now, previous Representative Freud came up here and he mentioned that the canal will never be built because investors are dubious. However, Representative Freud, this is the very reason that the HTND group is so useful for the canal group. The privatization of the building of the canal is what will help bring investors in because, as a private group, HTND can take that risk that will allow this canal to be built. Now, as Representative Freud mentioned, this has been the largest canal project that we have had in history so far. However, because we need this heavy project, it's necessary that we allow HTND Group the control of the canal for the next 50 years because it is justified in the risks that they take in building this dubious canal. Because we need this canal and because there are risks, the implementation of the bill only makes sense. Furthermore, environmental problems caused by this bill are only temporary. Now, according to the Christian Science Monitor in January 22nd, 2014, the environmental impact is inevitable and will be strong. But it will be temporary, says Cornell, the engineer who's the canal's administrator. After 3 or 4 years, it will be better than it was before. Now, Representative Freud, once again, just came up here and told us that Wang Jing has no incentive. But what about others? Wang Jing is not the sole administrator of this canal. There are many people involved in the production, construction, and administration of this canal. These individuals are those who will be held accountable for the construction of the canal. Now, for a representative to come up here and allege that this very much needed canal to the international community will simply not be built because one man does not have the experience is not legitimate. There are those who work under them, and there are those who have experience with canal building that will be invested in this project, that will aid in this, that will help the global economy. And so for the reasons that this canal is useful and that it will have accountability, I urge you to vote in the affirmation.
Thank you, Representative. 2 minutes, 51 seconds. Questioners, please rise. Representative Rafson and Hassan.
Thank you. Representative, could you explain to me how about 1 million acres of land can be repaired in 3 to 4 years?
And Representative, what I'm saying is that the money provided by the United States can actually help to mitigate these costs. There will be damage, but the benefits that we see from this bill will outweigh these costs.
And what about possible oil spills? How long do those take to clean up?
Any challenge that must be met will only be aided by the United States money because that money will help them improve their infrastructure.
Okay, and you want this to be an international canal, so why put a private firm in charge of it?
It is an international canal. That's the purpose of a canal, is to increase international
But if only
trade.
one...
Thank you. You stated that the Panama Canal will double in traffic over the next few years, correct?
Yes.
So where's your correlation that's going to say that they're not going to be able to handle that?
Because the Panama Canal is smaller
Do you
than...
have proof by a source that says they will not be able to handle that?
Previous Representative Croy mentioned that the canal will be 3 times wider. I'm going to refer to his
But
source.
is there any
and
reason
this
why the Panama Canal cannot handle the
Because
extra
ships are
traffic?
getting larger, Representative, because technology is improving and ships are getting bigger. So-
But ships can still go through the Panama Canal now. Is there a reason why they can't double the traffic?
Well, I don't have that information up with you. I can refer to you during the session.
Thank you.
Chair does apologize again for mangling your name. Speakers, please rise. That would be Representative Cummings.
Thank you. For the judges and the speakers, that's Representative Cahotis, Co-Ho-Dis. Just hoping we don't get any mispronunciations this time around. At the leisure of my presiding officer, give me a nod when you're ready, and at the leisure of all of my judges. If we look at the story of America, not just the United States of America, but both continents, North and South, we can see that that story is one of destruction. It's one of environmental damage, of displaced and eventually murdered Native peoples. And to me, this bill and this canal is just another chapter in that story. And it's a chapter that we cannot support, by passing Bill 201. So representatives, I urge you to recognize that because there has been no unbiased account of the environmental damage that will be done by this canal, and because there are other ways to strengthen our relationships with Nicaragua and to ensure that their economy grows without building this canal, that we fail Bill 201 and don't get ourselves involved in yet another American catastrophe. So first I would like to elaborate on Representative Rasmussen's point that there has been no good study done about the environmental damage of this canal. And for this, we'll look to the president of the Nicaraguan Academy of Sciences himself, who tells us on February 26th of 2014 that no independent environmental assessment of the canal's potential impacts has been conducted. And the Nicaraguan government says it plans to rely on an assessment conducted by HKND and that company has no obligation to reveal the results of that to the Nicaraguan public. So when Representative Hernandez tells us that we should trust in that we should blindly follow their lead and support what they're doing, when we don't know the impacts and when the impacts may not be revealed to us, I say that is a foolhardy path to set down in our foreign policy and one that we cannot afford to take. And Representative Ranginani, she told us that the environmental impact would be brief, but I would hesitate to say that the source you quoted, a man whose job potentially depends on how well this canal does, would be likely to be a biased source in estimating our environmental impact. And Representative Ravi tells us that we need to prevent destruction. So I would say the best way to prevent environmental destruction is not to build the canal in the first place. Now, we've been told by many representatives that this represents an economic boom to the country of Nicaragua, what it desperately needs. But there are other ways to accomplish this. So let's look to the World Bank, which tells us in 2014 that Nicaragua's inflation has been tamed to single digits, in 8% in 2011, down from 25% in 2008. Their economy remains stable, and their GDP forecast growth is 4.2% in 2013. And foreign direct investment and trade show an improved outlook. So when we have representatives like Representative Ravi concerned about the economy, we can see that the economy is growing. It's on an upward trend, and it will be easy for us to find other investments that will help them that is not this canal. And Representative Zhang wants us to gain more influence in the region. Let's do that in a way that doesn't harm the environment, that doesn't displace Native peoples, and doesn't continue the saga of destruction.
Thank you, Representative. 3 minutes and 5 seconds. Questioners, please rise. Representative Miller and Zhang.
Do poor countries generally have more relaxed environmental regulations than rich countries?
Yes, they do.
How do poor countries become rich?
Well, poor countries become rich through foreign investment, yes.
So how do we economically develop Nicaragua, if not through a canal and infrastructure spending?
I believe that we can develop them in other ways, that this specific canal that we are debating right now, will you please let me finish my answer?
Of course.
That this canal we're debating right now represents an extremely bad impact both on their environment, on their Native peoples, and will be yet another black mark in our foreign policy.
Can you give an example of a way we can develop Nicaragua?
Let's try to help them grow the tourism industry.
How are you going to prevent the building of this canal?
I believe that we can prevent it through imposing, if we must, sanctions, through putting a harsh line in the sand that says we do not approve of this canal.
How is that going to help our relationship with Nicaragua?
Well, I don't think it's a good thing for a relationship with Nicaragua to blindly support this canal when we don't even know what it's going to do to their environment.
How is imposing sanctions going to improve our relationship with
Nicaragua? I said we need to improve our relationship.
Correct.
I believe we should do that without this canal.
But you want to impose sanctions.
I want to ensure they don't build the canal.
Thank you. We reached the halfway point in terms of number of speeches. The chair would like to compliment the chamber on a spirited, lively, and insightful debate thus far. We move now to a pro speech on this bill. Representative Miller.
Thank you.
At long last.
Yes. High School this day. Presiding officers ready? Judges? In order to truly end today's debate on the Nicaraguan Canal, all we have to do is look at ourselves. Because in our nation's history, some of our greatest accomplishments have come through infrastructure, from the Erie Canal to the Transcontinental Railroad to the interstate highway system. And right now, Nicaragua is trying to build its prosperity in the same way, and we must support them for two key reasons. That one, this bill does increase the economic prosperity of Nicaragua, which has myriad benefits, and two, that giving them the $1 billion to help build this canal is the most sustainable way for them to achieve this prosperity, and therefore we must affirm. So representatives, one key reason we need to pass this bill is that this canal will increase Nicaragua's economic prosperity, which is so essential to such a poor country. This is according to the Smithsonian Magazine of February 20th, 2014, which says the Nicaraguan Canal will increase Nicaragua's GDP by 11% annually and create 1 million jobs in the years following the canal's construction. And this is so essential to a country that is the second poorest in the Americas. So Representative Cajotes, I want to address your concern about the environmental impact that this canal will have. But what we have to realize is that with economic prosperity and economic development, countries will be able to move on to more advanced needs, such as protecting the environment. So if we invest in this canal and we allow Nicaragua's economy to grow, we can see that they will, on their own, once they have their basic needs met, be able to enact stricter environmental concerns for the future. So we can see that, in fact, passing this bill will help Nicaragua's environment and their economy. And Representatives Froy and Rafson, you called this canal a scam, but if anything's a scam in today's Congress, it's bitcoins, and not Nicaragua's economic prosperity. So Representatives, we have to realize that in order to truly help Nicaragua's economy and environment, we must pass this bill. And Representatives, an even more important reason we need to pass this bill is that giving $1 billion to Nicaragua to help build this canal is the most sustainable way to do so. Let's look again to Jorge as president of the Nicaraguan National Academy of Sciences of also February 20th, 2014, when he says, we as Nicaraguans must use all of our resources to build this canal in the most sustainable, least harmful, and least destructive way possible to the benefit of all us Nicaraguans. So what we must realize is that whether or not we like it, this canal is happening because it benefits Nicaragua, benefits China, the Chinese company, and benefits global trade. So by giving $1 billion to these Nicaraguans, we can help them alleviate Freud's concern about how this canal will be built. We can help alleviate Representative Cajotes and all the other con speakers' concerns that this canal will have environmental dangers and displace people. Because after all, $1 billion is a lot of money to help alleviate any of the concerns con speakers have about this canal. And we must alleviate these concerns because this canal will lead to economic prosperity for Nicaraguans. And because this is helping their economy and helping their environment, we must affirm. So Representatives, the simple truth is that we, as the United States, a country so built on infrastructure, cannot look down on a country when it tries to build its prosperity in the same way that we did. So for the previous two reasons, we must affirm this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. 2 minutes and 46 seconds. Questioners, please rise. Let's see. Representative Rafson and Goldberg. Thank you.
Representative, in your speech, you made it seem like Nicaragua needs our help. How can we expect them to upkeep this canal after it's built?
Representative, the economic prosperity that will come from building this canal will increase the revenues for the government and will allow them to upkeep it.
Are those jobs temporary or permanent?
Representative, the jobs, there is a job multiplier, so even if the temporary jobs do go away after the canal is built, there will be a multiplier with the amount of money that gets spent in their economy, thus creating permanent jobs.
Okay, and you said that the $1 billion could address any of the negation's concerns, but what about the fact that they only explicitly go towards the environmental and displaced citizens?
Representative.
Thank you. Representative, now, considering that this bill is so beneficial to the rest of the country, how are the indigenous people being harmed?
Representative, the indigenous people aren't being harmed by the
No, they're not being harmed by them being displaced?
Because they will have the opportunity to get jobs and rise up the income ladder. That's not harm in any way
Which do you
whatsoever.
prefer, a house or a job?
Representative, I would prefer both in this bill than the Nicaraguan.
Yeah, but with this bill you can't have both. Which do you prefer, a house or a job?
They will get both under this bill, Representative.
But they will not immediately. Their
Economic
houses will be
prosperity,
destroyed.
houses, cars, jobs, everything you want, Representative.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a reminder, we move now to the second half of the list, so the order of the names is, of course, changed. Okay. We ask now for a con speaker. If you would please rise. It's hard again. Representative near top. Yes.
Are questions called on at random by precedence?
I don't have the skill to use precedents. I do, however, I am keeping track. I'm keeping track of the total number of questions, and I'm trying to distribute them as evenly as I can.
please join my presence. And I'm representing your Dr. Mercy for this. Representative Cajotes just came up here and gave a phenomenal analogy about how we need to stop reading and not go to the next chapter. However, I beg today's Congress do more than that. I beg that we close the book by closing this bill. Because, representatives, not only is this legislation an empty promise, but it is an empty canal, which has no benefits not in the United States, but Nicaragua itself. So for the following two areas of analysis, I urge a negative vote. Now to begin, Representative Rangiani, I apologize, came up here and said that we can mitigate all the damage caused environmentally because of today's legislation. And Representative Hernandez told that there was a lot of problems because of the environment. However, we have to understand that not all of the problems associated with building this canal are reversible. And by promising to mitigate the problems that Nicaragua has through this investment, we see that we are failing to be a credible source because we cannot live up to the expectations. According to the Wired magazine, which has been heavily quoted already, on February 26, 2014, the canal would create the canal would create a major shipping route close proximity to the Seaflower Marine Protected Area that is a World Heritage Site off the coast of Nicaragua's Caribbean coast. The area encompasses one of the largest coral reefs in the world and is prone to accidents which are irreversible once set in. Representatives, coral reefs are a fundamental part of economies around the world, whether they are on the coast of it or not. And we understand that it is net loss of billions of dollars because of the damage to this very specific environment. Representatives, we cannot reverse this damage, and this bill is an empty promise, which is why I urge a vote in negation. Now, secondly, Representatives, not only is it an empty promise, but we have to understand, opposed to what Representative Miller just told you, it is an empty canal. Because although we understand that there could be a need for Nicaragua to have this canal, there is no international need, which is why it will not be built, which has also been brought up by the previous negation. According to the same article from Wired magazine, there is almost no geographic advantage from the canal in Nicaragua, and the few hundred miles shaved off the major shipping routes between Asia and North America would be balanced out by longer transit times through the canal that is more than 3 times as long as its competitor in Panama. We see clearly Panama has stayed ahead. Representative Brigandi said that we can simply use both canals and mitigate both of the problems that cause the shipping. However, no one is going to use this canal because the time it will take to get through it is equal to the amount of time and the cost that would have been taken to use Panama's canal. So we see that this is an empty canal and an empty promise. And therefore, because we can not only hurt our credibility by passing this legislation, because it holds no ground in terms of the environmental aspects that are portrayed in the legislation, but we have to see that the only people benefiting it could be Nicaragua, who will not benefit in the future, Representative Miller, because they will gain no traffic. This is a lose-lose, close the book, and fail to this legislation.
Thank you, Representative. 3 minutes and 8 seconds. Questioners, please rise. Representative Miller and Feltus.
How much of Nicaragua's environment will be destroyed in the future if it remains a poor country?
I can't tell you the exact number, although from previous speakers we can see that there's a lot of diverse environmental impacts that are being harmed.
So on the aggregate, isn't it better to build this canal and sacrifice a little bit of the environment now for the rest of the environment in the future?
Yes, we can sacrifice the environment for this canal, which is not going to be used, so it is we're wasting the environment in that case because there is no benefits from building this canal, as I stated in my evidence.
Are there myriad economic benefits for the Nicaraguans, the 1 million jobs, the 11% GDP?
Exactly, adjusted.
Representative, a previous representative said that Panama was going to be experiencing overcrowding soon. Wouldn't that mean that some would make the decision to take this canal instead of it was built?
No, President, the assumption was made that Panama will be overwhelmed. As I stated in my research, Panama will be the likely choice and can support all of this traffic because it is a shorter route that is a lot less costly.
Even with the new types of ships being built and
Representative, the company building this canal doesn't even know how to construct it. We don't even know if it's feasible that they will be able to complete the canal and that it will be effective.
Well, with the United States help, can we have that be built?
With the United States help in terms of the environment and policy, we're not building it.
Thank you.
Motion.
Yes, sir.
Move to table as well.
There's a move to table. Is there a second? Second. All in favor of tabling this bill requires a majority. Please raise your hand. Clearly, this passes.
Motion.
Yes, sir.
I move for a brief 5-minute recess.
We'll move for a 5-minute recess. Its brevity will be determined later. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
5 minutes. Calling the session back to order. The chair would like to ask, are there any motions?
Motion.
Are there any motions?
Motion.
Yes, sir.
I move to untable Bill 101.
Is there a second to untable 101?
Second.
Okay. All in favor of untabling 101, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That is a majority vote. We will now return to Bill 101. We left off on a con speech up here, so the chair would ask for a pro speaker on Bill 101. Is there any pro speaker?
Motion. I move for a brief 3-minute recess to allow for discussion. Second.
Okay.
Second.
Let me just ask one more time. Is there a pro speech right now? Okay. The chair will entertain a 2-minute recess. Be quick. Recess.
I think we've got it.
Well, we're going to find out. All right. When we left off, Bill 101 had been untabled, which is where we currently are. The chair will entertain any motions before we repeat the debate process. Yes,
I
sir.
move to table Bill 101.
Is there a second to table 101?
Second.
There is a second. All in favor of tabling Bill 101, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10. Clearly that motion passes. Bill 101 is back on the table. Are there any other motions?
Motion.
Representative Glazer.
Motion to untable Bill 301.
Well, we don't have to table. It was never tabled. We would move immediately to debate. Okay. Seeing no other motions, we will move then immediately to debate on Bill 301. Is there a sponsorship? Representative Feltus unopposed.
So it's Representative Feltus for the second time today. I spoke 7th before.
Sorry, looking for that.
Just give me a nod when you're ready. Security and prosperity, models of the United States. For should we not be a secure and prosperous country? Well, as it stands, with our current regulations, we are neither. Due to leaks in our security organizations, we are experiencing a lack of security and prosperity. And representatives, we need to see that as it stands, we lose billions of dollars and lives due to these leaks, that millions of people are given access to this secure and important information, and that with our current standards, we are failing miserably to fix this problem. We must pass Bill 301. Now, representatives, currently as it stands, the United States loses billions of dollars due to these problems. According to the New Yorker on August 20th, 2013, because of the NSA leak Edward Snowden's disclosures, the government will almost certainly have to spend billions of dollars, and thousands of people will have to spend thousands of hours reworking our procedures, not to mention the loss of agents across the world. Representatives, we've lost lives due to these leaks. We've lost money. We've wasted man-hours that we could instead be using to defend the United States, to ensure that we are safe. But why does this happen, representatives? Well, the reason is that the government has improper procedures about how to handle this, and millions of people are given access to this important and secure information. According to the Washington Post on June 12, 2013, as many as 4 million people hold top-secret security clearance, of which 50,000 are private contractors. And one reason for this trend is that the U.S. government has become so reflexive about classifying information, much of what is not nearly as sensitive as an NSA spying program, that clearance is required for it as well. Basically, representatives, what this means is anything that is necessary, anything small, is put with high-ranking security risk. And because of that, we have to give out security wholesale to millions of people. And in fact, over 500,000 not even in the government organizations. With this legislation, by cutting the number of half, that will require that they rethink what is classified as top secret, and make sure that the people that are in this top secret category are really need to know the information given to them. At the same time, representatives, we have instituted new policies to try to stop this, but all of them have failed, which is why we need 301. According to the Washington Post on June 11, 2013, since the disclosure by WikiLeaks in 2010, the Pentagon has taken steps to better protect its networks. For example, banning the use of thumb drives, mandating users have smart cards to authenticate identities, and requiring analysts to review computer logs to find suspicious behavior. Yet, we still had leaks like the NSA leaks recently. Representatives, our new policies have failed. We need to look at the long picture and see that as we continue to lose billions, as we lose our agents overseas, and that with these millions of people knowing this information, it's frankly ridiculous. So let's take a step for our security and our prosperity.
Representative, 3 minutes and 4 seconds. Questioners, please rise. Representative Hernandez and Rankin.
Right, why don't
I'm sorry, Rafson. Go ahead.
Why don't we test the employees currently and then let go those who fail the test?
Well, Representative, I believe that as our current policy stands, we have far, far too many under this current policy, and by setting a limit on how many they can have, the agencies will be required to rethink their strategies. Hence, instead of just having a blatant fix the problem yourselves and let it go, they'll actually fix the problem.
So are we carefully selecting the people that we are letting go, like the 50%, or are we just letting go randomly 50%?
Well, the legislation says that they're going to have to take a test.
So you said about 1 million people are access to one of these two?
4 million people have
4
access
million.
to this
So what are we going
information.
to do with 2 million people that we take their jobs away in 2015?
Well, we're not taking away their jobs, Representative. What we're doing is we're reclassifying information, and we're making sure that the people that need the information have it, and those that don't have it.
This doesn't reduce the amount of employed.
It doesn't say that they're going to be fired. It doesn't say that they cannot. They just
it's
cannot.
nowhere in the bill.
It just says that they won't have top secret security access.
Okay. And what do we constitute as a weapon of mass destruction?
Thank you, Representative. We're moving on to a con speech. It's going to get harder. Representative Froy.
Thank you. For the information to everyone, I'm Alex Froy. I spoke 14th last session. 12th? Yeah. I believe you're all those above me. When Representative Feltus states that protecting the safety of our constituents is this Congress's foremost responsibility, I completely agree with him. But what he fails to realize is the reason why so many people have access to this information. And so because non-governmental employees need access to sensitive information, because we've already enhanced security measures since the Snowden leak, and because the NSA already employs rigorous background checks, we need to fail this legislation. Let's first look towards how non-governmental employees, companies, need this vital information so that they can help us create better cybersecurity methods. According to Bloomberg on June of 2013, makers of hardware and software, banks, internet security providers, satellite telecommunications companies participate in government programs. In some cases, the information gathered may be used not just to defend the nation, but to help infiltrate computers of its adversaries. So when Representative Feltus tells you that the large amount of access to all the codes is hurting the American people, it's actually helping them. Because in the way in which the codes are distributed, companies can use the information to create better methods of cybersecurity. And when we have better methods of cybersecurity, we create a safer America, where people are less likely to have to deal with cyber infiltrations later in their lives. It helps companies, it helps the government, and it helps every American. Now, let's next look towards how we've actually implemented security measures since the Snowden leak. Representative Feltus told you about the increased limitations on what employees could do, but he failed to realize that these limitations came after the Snowden leak, after the NSA leak. And according to NPR, in September of 2013, after Snowden's discoveries, NSA security offers have now limited the options employees have for storing on their own, including thumb drives. So Representative Feltus will have you know, would like you to believe that there have been incidents after the increased security measures by the NSA. There have not been any incidents. These measures are working. These measures are limiting employees' ability to deliver information to people that shouldn't have the information. and we need to continue to implement these methods rather than cutting 50% of the employees who have this information. Last, let's look towards how the NSA already has rigorous background checks. No average Joe can just sign up for a job at the NSA and gain valuable access to codes that have to do with weapons of mass destruction. As reported to the National Security Agency on January of 2009, during the background investigation, previous and current employment, education, and residence are verified. Interviews are conducted with friends, neighbors, supervisors, and coworkers. Credit checks and police checks are also conducted. Now, this is a lengthy process, one that involves many people, and one that gathers a lot of information about everyone who works for the NSA. Now, let's realize that the NSA, as it stands right now, has employed the measures in order to protect the American people. Please negate.
Thank you, Representative Prentice. In 4 seconds, questioners, please rise. Representative Hassanein and Phillips.
Thank you. If we reclassify the information that we're giving to these private contractors, how come we can't make it more effective so that we don't have to give out all of our secrets?
There's no reason to reclassify the information. If we reclassify the information, the contractors will no longer have the information and they will no longer be able to
Why don't we
create cybersecurity
reclassify it
programs.
after they're done? If they have the information, it isn't vulnerable.
Well, they're not done now. This bill says it will go into effect in the next year, and these companies are still working on it.
So you're saying that if these contractors have the information, doesn't that spread the information to more people?
No, the contractors need the information. They're still contractually obligated not to tell anybody the information.
Representative, if we reclassify the information below top secret, can we not give it to people that don't have this high of an access?
We could. We don't want to give it to those people, so why would we reclassify?
Well, if we're still giving it to, if we limit that pool to only the contractors we're going to hire, can we still not give them the information so they can still enact these procedures?
No, we can't give them this information. There's no way they'll be able to enact these procedures.
So if we reclassify it, they can't get it at all, even if it's lower?
No.
So if it's lower and they have higher access, they can't
As
get
though
it?
they may be able to get it, but this doesn't supersede my point that people who...
Thank you, Representative. We move now to a 3-minute pro speech. Excuse me. Representative Waldera.
Thank you, that's Representative Waldera for the second time today. As always, I'm in at the leisure of all those about me. Any indication when you're ready would be great. The two main news stories that we've seen this year are Snowden and being snowed in. And while you're on your own with the weather, Bill 301 provides the most effective solution to avoiding occurrences of spillage as what we saw in a situation with Edward Snowden. So because reasonable cuts can be made, and because our current system slows down the economy and leads to less transparency in the government, we must see that the only vote we can cast in today's debate is one in the affirmation. So first, let's look at the reasonable cuts that can be made. Now, according to GovCentral on July 12th of 2008, it said that the vast majority of military personnel are given very basic levels of clearance and must be reinvestigated every 15 years. The report goes on to say that hourly positions may require security clearance, including secretaries, security officers, librarians, system administrators, and computer support personnel. Furthermore, the Washington Post published in June 12th of 2013 that the U.S. intelligence community and its legions of private contractors has grown so vast that it has required so many of its employees to secure high-level security clearances that even people whose job it is to move boxes now needs top security clearance. Representatives, our security system has clearly gotten to an outrageous level. There are reasonable cuts that can be made, and Bill 301 will implement those cuts in a very effective manner. Now, furthermore, let's look at what effects these cuts would have on our economy. Now, also according to GovCentral in the 2008 report, it said that, suppose you've come across an hourly job that looks like a great fit. There's just one small matter. The position requires a U.S. security clearance, and you don't have one. You may think that you can just apply for the clearance, and in no time the job will be yours, but the process isn't quite that simple. According to John Wojcik, the manager of security and safety for Department of Defense contractor, it can take up to 2 years to obtain a security clearance due to the high number of background checks already in progress. So Representative Troy, you certainly are correct that thorough background checks are in place, but what we can see is that because we have so many of these background checks in place, it's actually slowing down the economy because it's taking so long for these administrators to actually get these jobs. And furthermore, because it's taking so long to get these jobs and so many security checks, we can see that less people will be working for the government and less people will be participating in politics. So Representatives, I can see that with an age where cybersecurity seems very daunting, it may be difficult to sign on to the idea of something that appears to reduce our national security. However, we see that that is simply not happening at all because these cuts can be made at a reasonable level, and because these security checks that are occurring now are slowing down the economy because they are so abundant, they become unnecessary. Representatives, Bill 301 will not harm our national security because it will be making reasonable cuts, and it will only make us more efficient and allow more people to participate in the bureaucracy of the government, ultimately leading to a more educated and a more active population. We must vote in the affirmation for Bill 301.
Thank you, Representative. 2 minutes and 59 seconds. Questioners, please rise. Representative Glazer and Zinas.
So who will oversee now the security needed for these contractors?
The NSA will oversee the different checks that will be in place, and they will be conducting the interviews that we need to keep.
Will the NSA also be conducting, they'll be conducting interviews, will they also be conducting daily background checks on these employees as well as the contractors too?
Yes, they will.
But however, why should we be implementing this test if it is not the test we should worry about, rather than how they conduct themselves at the work office?
Well, it's both, because the more people that we have access to this top security information, the more people that can expose.
Well, what will the test do? Expose
How arbitrary is the number 50% of all employees that have access to the information are going to be reduced?
How arbitrary. It's so many of the people that have this clearance
Is it 50%?
I'm
Okay, so why not mandate a piece of legislation that specifically goes through the current people that have access to the information and find out which ones can be cut and then propose that amount to be cut?
Because the NSA can be trusted to make reasonable cuts.
Okay, so you are deciding that we are going to just arbitrarily cut 50% of the people regardless of their stance, rather than research and find out specifically where
The
we are
NSA is
having.
not going to be cutting random positions.
Thank you. We move now to a 3-minute con speech. Representative Cahotis.
Thank you.
Yes.
Is there a way to address the chamber very briefly without going recess?
I'm going to rule that out of order. For the sake of time, mostly because I don't want multiple addresses.
I was wondering if
If I was Representative Cahotis, I spoke way down on the list. Not sure what the exact number is, but just give me a nod once you find my paper. I would like to meet the congressperson who drafted this legislation, who decided that the way to deal with security leaks is to fire 50% of all of the people who deal with top secret information on a daily basis. I would like to shake their hand and ask them how they've managed to maintain such a good view of inherent human goodness by spending any time in Congress at all. Because, representatives, when I looked at this legislation, to be frank, it scared me. That we saw a problem and we decided the best way to remedy it was by indiscriminately cutting 50% of our security jobs. That is not the way to deal with the problem we face today. So because 301 has some major inherent flaws, and because there are better, easier solutions, we can recognize that passing 301 is probably the worst step we could take today to deal with our security crisis. So our current situation is a problem, I'll agree to that. But 301 presents an even larger problem. For this, we'll look to the Wall Street Journal, which tells us in September 17th of 2013 that 1.4 million people, including more than 483,000 contractors, hold extremely high-level top secret security clearance, higher than the top secret clearance that Representative Feltis told us. Now, 301 indiscriminately fires those people. It indiscriminately cuts 50% of positions. So while I would like to believe in the NSA and the NSA's ability to only cut the people who actually are useless or don't require that level of clearance, I don't trust in those fired members' ability to keep this knowledge they know to themselves. Because representatives, short of locking them up, I would ask you, what can we do to ensure they don't spread the information that they now know? That firing them is probably the best way to ensure the ire of a government employee. So 301 is not a feasible solution. So Representative Waldera wants a feasible solution, and right now, I will offer one. Let's look to how we currently do background checks for our employees. This is done by the U.S. Investigator Services, otherwise known as the USIS. This was the company that performed the faulty background check on Edward Snowden, who's been brought up multiple times in this debate. So I volunteer that we be a little stricter with them, but we also make their job easier. We need to ensure that they are giving us quality employees so we can ensure the security and the safety of our information today, and that we can make their job easier by allowing them access to social media sites. Because according to Reuters, in February 11th of 2014, there is basically a blanket ban on using sites such as Facebook, Twitter, and Google to reveal information about their users. Now, when we want to know something about someone, Facebook stalking them is the easiest way to go about it, and I find it a little surprising that we deprive our security contractors of this most basic source of knowledge. So I urge you to recognize the fact that 301 is doomed to fail, and we must handle it.
Thank you, Representative. 3 minutes and 9 seconds. Questioners, please rise. Representative Rangianani and Hassan.
Representative, you speak of arbitrary cuts. However, have leaks shown that these cuts are not arbitrary?
Can you rephrase that, please?
Because of leaks in the past, doesn't this prove that there are people who have access to this information that shouldn't?
Yes, and then I believe that passing this bill and cutting half of them, which is an extremely large number, is not the best way to ensure more leaks don't happen.
However, isn't it true that this bill cuts their clearance and not their job itself?
Well, cutting their clearance would also be a surefire way to raise their ire against us.
However, if they still had a job with the government, then why would they do
Thank you. Representative, instead of just firing all these people as you propose, couldn't we just decide who we're going to contract?
I don't propose firing all these people. That's mainly what this bill proposes.
I understand. What I meant to say is, you're saying that by passing today's piece of legislation, we're essentially firing 50% of the people, correct?
Yes.
But couldn't we instead just reallocate how many people we're actually hiring instead of firing for these specific contracts?
You could completely do that. I think what we need is an overhaul of the system, and it's an overhaul that 301 doesn't provide. I think you and I can both agree on that.
Yeah, so exactly.
Thank you.